Okay, that's a 1-card combo. You know what? I'll fucking take this. Let me just get my spreadsheet up real quick. We do whatever we can, because we're hunting all that head. It's here. It's top tier. We're completely fine. We don't lose to 1 duster. We essentially do, but it's fine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We just went +7 off of 1 card. This deck is good, guys. Trust. All right, YouTube video about a deck that I have no clue how to play, but it's fine because just you trust the spreadsheet, you tattoo it into any part of your body, and it'll come through. Trust. Okay, so what's the deck? Well, the deck is just a 1-card starter, right? The deck is so good in theory and very frustrating in execution, but it is a good deck when you take into account the fact that this meta has such a huge high ceiling and everything else besides Halcyon and set 5 Eldritch Pass is not absolutely gaming. So what's the deck? You want to draw Kepler and you want to draw Gate. Hell, you only draw one of them and you have full combo. It's insane. If you draw a combination of 2 cards, you still have combo. Copper Nicholas and Gate, that's combo, baby. Copper Nicholas and Griffin, that's combo, baby. Copper Nicholas and Kepler, that's probably combo, baby. There's a lot of combinations, and it's really good. And I'm probably gonna be really bad at explaining it. So let's just show it or something. This is where I do my fancy editing magic to show it. But what's the problem with the deck? Well, the problem is you have to play a lot of one-of monsters that you basically serve to be mostly as pendulum scales. So the whole idea is your game plans to get 2 DDD monsters on the field to summon the Epic of Gilgamesh, which allows you to then place 2 different DDD scales onto your pendulum zones. So typically that could be something such as like an Orthros or a Ragnarok, so that you could set up a lot of plays and extend, or it could be something like a Cerberus and a Rage, so you could pendulum summon something like a Kepler from your extra deck and then be able to modulate it to level 4 so you could further facilitate certain rank plays of the 4 variety. But there are also some scenarios where you're just like, ah, shit, here we go again. And now I got to scale up Thomas because you don't have access to Griffin. So now you got to get access to Griffin by popping the Griffin so you can then grab it back with Thomas so that you can then summon it along with the monster that was level 4 that you previously pendulum summoned. I know, it's dumb. It's ridiculous. You're just playing solitaire, except your enemy is yourself. But it's cool when it works out. So okay, so we did the Gilgamesh play, right? So but what's the point? Well, the point is loops on days, except without the loops. So usually what you do after you set up the Gilgamesh is you want to go ahead and then take advantage of pendulums being a pendulum thing. So you have your 2 scales pointing down here, so you can pendulum summon 2. So ideally, let's say if you have like 2 monsters in your extra deck, so let's say the standard one would be something like Copper Nickel and Griffon, which will allow you to then go ahead and pendulum summon both of them from your extra deck, since when you link them away, that's where they go. You pendulum summon them, and then you get to go ahead and have 2 level 4s on the field. You might be able to use Griffin's effect to be able to discard a DD card to draw a card. Hey, it might come up, alright? If you have something cracked to this card, like a Necro Slime or a Lamia, bro, you're actually killing it. Hell, even a Swirl Slime could be goated. But anyway, the whole point is you get those 2 bodies on the field. And then you get Wave King Caesar on the field. Now you're, at this point, very much gluing your eyes to this sheet because it depends on what your hand and your goals are. But a lot of times your goals might be to either remove the King Caesar from the field or rank it up into King Tell to remove him from the field. Usually both in the same turn. And what that allows you to do is with the Wave King Caesar, you could go ahead and grab yourself a contract card so that you could extend your plays. Usually if you already start off with the Dark Contract at the gate, you grab the Swamp King. Or sometimes you don't even have the gate, but you say F it, and you grab the Swamp King anyway, because fusion is good. And then with the Tell, what you end up milling really depends on the situation. Sometimes you mill the new field spell, which allows you to then go ahead and grab back a DD monster from your graveyard or extra deck. Sometimes you do that to grab back Orthros, so that you could then go ahead and special summon it back when you take burn damage, so that could enable you to get level synchro plays, the Siegfried plays specifically. Or sometimes you'll go ahead and mill with the King Tell and Necro Slime so that you could go ahead and set up a fusion play via that. Or you set up a Swirl Slime if you need to get that into the graveyard. Or whatever the hell you want. You're literally following the combo sheet. Spreadsheet, baby. Okay? And then you go ahead and usually after that you try to get yourself some value of extension from there. Because the whole point of getting King Caesar as well as King Tell on board is to remove them so you can get further cards to extend your board. And usually that culminates into getting yourself a King Genghis on the field, the OG Flame King Genghis, so that you could then go ahead and use Flame King Genghis's effect, so you could then special summon the Griffon onto the field, which would summon from the graveyard, which, because it was attached to an Xyz, goes to the graveyard, even though pendulums and all those shenanigans, allows you to then go ahead and activate its other effect, so you could add a DD card from the deck to the hand. Can't add your Dark Contracts with it, but you can add most of your engine here. And usually what you want to add, though, is your DDD Headhunt, because it's new and it's cracked and it's searchable, and this is really your only way of searching it. So the whole point of this card is that if you control a triple D card, then you can target one face-up monster your opponent controls and then steal it while negating its effects. It doesn't have to be an effect monster, but it certainly does help. And then if it was something from the extra deck, then you're going to be able to also treat it as a DDD card, which allows you to then go ahead and use it for your further DDD plays, specifically going into another Gilgamesh or summoning your new Machinex. But we'll get into that in probably 2 seconds. So usually that's like your standard line, is trying to get like Genghis so that you could then summon back the Griffon, and when you have the privilege of having Ragnarok scaled, you could also use its effect in conjunction with the Genghis, so you could summon back either your Caesar or your Tell and then get those effects back. So Caesar can search for Dark Contract card as a hard once per turn. King Tell can mill a DD card as a forever. Just keep looping it. It's insane. So it really depends on. Usually you're able to consistently get both of those in play for your first turn, so you set up your graveyard as well as your field to then allow you to usually mills, let's say, for example, Necro Slime, or search yourself the Dark Contract to Swamp King, so you could then go ahead and make that second DD Flame King Genghis, and then 2 level 6s makes you not Beatrice because we're locked out into DDDs only, so no adventure engine for us. We instead go into Wave High King Caesar, which allows you to negate special summon effects, and it's not a once per turn, it's just as many materials as we have, and it also lets us gain 1800 attack for whatever reason. So that's pretty interesting. I always summon in defense mode, so I almost never get that benefit, but I think it's a cute benefit, by the way. And anyway, so that's that. And then if you're really cracked and manage to get your Orthros on the field through that play that I mentioned with the patent license, adding your Orthros back so that you can then go ahead and special summon it when you take damage, most notably from the Ragnarok, special summoning another monster from your graveyard. You then special summon that Orthros, and remember the other combo I just mentioned before? That's right, you use Genghis to summon Griffin. Now you have 2 level 4s, and what's the tutor? Now you summon Curse King Siegfried. So that headhunt that you worked so hard to search, and those scales you worked so hard to set, they won't die to one Fender Duster. They'll die to the Lightning Storm after you negate the Fender Duster. So at least that's 2 cards you were able to use up. And so that's really most of the big plays here. And of course, like the final most notable addition to the deck nowadays with the new support is the Visor King Deus Machinex, which is actually ridiculous because of the fact that you could just summon it by overlaying it over any triple D monster you control. So that includes any monster you stole from Headhunt that does get counted as a triple D if it was, summoned from the extra deck. As well as like any of your fusions, your Siegfrieds, your Wave King Caesars, etc. Even if you bring him back from the graveyard, those are all valid targets to be able to easily rank up into this 3000 attack behemoth, which has an effect. So usually when you summon it by this alternate condition rather than the way that we never summoned it, which is 2 level 10 feed monsters, because we will never do that because it's absurd. You only have 1 material on this thing, so it has an effect that allows you to steal an opponent's monster in response to their on-field effects by either detaching 2 materials, which Zoinks will never have, or destroying a Dark Contract card you control, so which hopefully we'll have. So when you have a Dark Contract card, this puts a lot of additional pressure on your opponent on top of, let's say, the spell trap negates, on top of the special summon negates, on top of literally just existing as big beefy bodies that are just incredibly ginormous. So it's an awkward card, but the fact that it's so easy to summon makes up for its awkwardness because sometimes you won't have the Dark Contract. But the nice thing is if you can get this play rolling, that first contract pop will allow you to steal a monster that your opponent activates their effect of, which will allow you to get that second material attached to it. Now you can activate the effect by detaching 2 materials, so even if you don't control a second Dark Contract, this isn't a once per turn effect, so you just go ahead, use it again, steal a second monster, and suddenly Flues lose because they don't have anything to attribute something with. It's ridiculous. The fact that the Visor Machinex is so easy to summon makes so many plays with Genghis and High King Genghis very, very great, because now whenever you need to get Genghis or High King Genghis on the field so you can special summon from the graveyard. You don't have to do any more awkward plays where you have to remove 2 monsters from your field to go into like another Gilgamesh anymore, just so you could trigger the Genghis's effect, the Gengai effect, Gangrene's effect. You could just go ahead and overlay that Gilgamesh you already had into Mach X, and suddenly you have Big Boy, and you have a special summon for the graveyard. It's actually ridiculous. So there's a lot of like ways that this new support, while it doesn't like catapult the deck to meta, allows for a lot more flexibility and convenience in the way you play the deck. So it's really nice. And other than that, we play Zeus because we could easily go into Mach X, which is ridiculous. So you go into Mach X, beat over with anything with your 3000 attack body, and then you just go rank up into Zeus with 2 materials. Or you could just make Wave King Caesar overlay into King Tell and then overlay into Zeus with 4 materials, but that's a little crazy by that point. But keep in mind though that you can't go to Zeus if you summon either the Gilgamesh or the Orthros, since Gilgamesh locks you into DDDs and Orthros locks you into the Fiends when you special summon both. So that's more of like a follow-up play, or if you decide to forego the Gilgamesh play altogether. Like, let's say if you were able to use Slime to fuse into the Genghis and then you rank up into Mach X to attack to your opponent's monster, then you could go into Zeus. But again, you're basically trading off in those situations if you're not able to wait for the next turn to go for a Zeus. Other than that, we play Dark. In theory, it would be nice to heal life points, but at practice, we just play it really so that we could then go ahead and summon it if we have access to Lamia, but we don't have a way to modulate its level to 4 to do better synchro plays into Siegfried, because Master Cerebrus is what would do that. But in those situations where we can't modulate to level 4, we just summon it and then summon Dark, so we could then summon Siegfried anyway. And it's pretty cute. And then we play High King Genghis just as another big body to have, also as an additional negate to have on our own turn, along with Siegfried to stop the opponent from being able to be like, hey, monkey flip. It's better in Typhon setups as far as I'm aware, because Typhon helps you extend your boards much better and gives you some really good OTK setups. I personally just took out Typhon because I was getting really frustrated going second with this deck. It has a lot of potential to break boards, but I think a lot of that goes in combination with your opening hand, your ability to do really good combos that are better than my ability to do so, and sometimes your opponent's inability to understand when to interrupt, or sometimes you just being able to get lucky enough to be able to play through that interruption. So I decided to opt for playing like the Effect Veiler, the Imperms, the Maxis, the Ash Blossom, the regular Catalog, and then called by because Cope. So that's pretty much my justification for that. But Typhon is also another card that a lot of people do play because it allows you to have basically easy access to High King Genghis, which gives you another way to both special summon a monster from the graveyard to extend your board even further, while also allowing you to just have that extra body on board to be beefy and all that nonsense. So that's really the reason for the extra deck. The last thing is Baron de Fleur. It's very rare. The only setups you could summon it are essentially where you can go and fusion summon into Genghis and then normal summon Orthros, because Orthros locks you into Fiends only when special summon. When normal summon it, you can then go into Baron de Fleur. But really, the only time you want to do that is when you could summon Orthros and Genghis along with 2 other monsters, so you can still go into your Gilgamesh play. If you can't do that, then you're probably better off just eating the Nibiru and coping for your scales. So just something to keep in mind. This could be cut, but there's, some people have played Kali Yuga, and they play it by overlaying Thomas, using its on-field effect to special summon a Ragnarok into Kali Yuga. In theory, it's nice to be able to have hate against like quintuple back row set, but again, it's a best of 1 format, so going first, you're never really going to be doing that setup, because usually that setup means you're not doing all your other good setups. It's possible, but it's really rare, and it's just like you have to like hope that setup is going to be beneficial for that matchup. Some people have opted to play 2 Gilgamesh, but I really like 3 just because certain janking combo lines when you're playing around ridiculous setups allows you to go ahead and continue to get advantage off of King Caesar and King Tell, but that usually requires you to link off Gilgamesh into another Gilgamesh using one of the 2. And sometimes you might have to do that a 3rd time in your turn. So it's really nice to be able to have that ability, and theoretically it can set further scales into your Pendulum Zone, even if it's special summons, so being able to special summon from the graveyard is nice. So even if you go through all your Gilgamesh turn 1, if you have a way of bringing it back, you could still benefit from that effect later on in the duel. So other than that, that's the deck. Necro Slime enables fusion plays, so usually that in combination with Dark Contract to Swamp King, or the Swirl Slime is how you're going to be getting into your rank 6 setups with your Gangsters while summoning monsters from the graveyard. Rage is insane. I literally was able to OTK with it once, but man, that time I was able to OTK with it. I actually said no to its effect, so I actually didn't end up OTKing. But I could have, so keep that in mind. It also could shut off effects by triggering a DDD monster. A lot of times it's really costly to do it, but when you're able to like basically set up a huge field of boards, usually like 3-card combos, where you're able to go Gilgamesh and use Rage's effect, you can lock out your opponent from activating either spells and traps or activating cards in their hand or graveyard. So that could be an insane way of setting up a strong board while playing through Nibiru. But more often, ends up being a very useful scale because being a scale 0 allows you to special summon the Kepler from the extra deck. So it's good to have. Thomas allows you to do stuff that I probably talked about. Ragnarok is an extender, Cerberus is a modulator, Orthros helps you pop your opponent's back row, which is great, and when it's scaled up, but also it allows you to pop your own cards when you need to turn one to get them to the graveyard, namely the Caesar and the Tel. And then Copper Nickel is going to allow you to mill, which can usually be something like a Necro Slime or even something like a Swirl Slime, which allows you to banish it, special summon a DD from your hand. It's cool. The synergy is there, just the power level sometimes could be underwhelming compared to like other decks, considering the amount of hoops we sometimes have to jump through to do our setups. Like sometimes we could have an amazing board where we have Machinex threatening Monster Steel, we have Siegfried for Spell Trap Negates, or we have Baron de Fleur for Omni Negate, and then we have Wave High King Caesar for Special Summon Negates, and then we have Headhunt for like a Monster Steel and Negate, and maybe a Hand Trap on top of that because we're cute. But in practice, that's not always the case, and then you cry and you complain, but you just get back into it and you get your dual level max anyway. Anyway, I promised myself this would be 10 minutes. Yo, I really like taking out Piri Reese. Like, I gotta be real. One of the big changes I made also was like taking out Small World and Piri Reese and 1-for-1. I didn't like 1-for-1 in Small World because of like the -1 that would give you, where sometimes you would want to use them to bait out, or you just really require them to resolve, and when they don't resolve, you're just like down from your opponent's ash or whatever. And see, we didn't even play. We play more hand traps, and that's how good we are. That's what I'm saying. Do not play the Piris. Okay, I'm done.